Hello, welcome back to the Breaking News Update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you are watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm back with another update coming out from the war between Russia and Ukraine, and I've got a lot of big news I'd like to share with all of you today. So, we're going to start today's video off with an update coming out from a story last week on Thursday. We had some news that Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, was warning that Russian forces were going to launch a new offensive into Ukraine, mostly in the Sumy and Kharkiv regions. This is up in northeastern Ukraine, just over the border from Belgorod and Kursk Oblast. And we know right now Ukrainian forces are operating in both of those regions. So last week we heard this offensive was going to be getting started sometime in the spring. Now I have a new update from a Ukrainian officer from their military. So this update here on your screen, Russia's preparing for a new ground assault on Ukraine this month. Russian forces are preparing for an offensive in April. Senior Lieutenant Vladimir Fokin, company commander of Ukraine's 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, said on national television on April 2nd. Okay, so this is more show that looks like Russia is not prepared to end this war anytime soon. It looks like they want to continue this fight into Ukraine and try to demolish as much of Ukraine as they can. So we heard it was going to start somewhere around in the springtime, which right around in April, we're getting close to spring anyway. So it doesn't surprise me that this offensive is going to get underway. And also from what we've been hearing inside of the Kursk region, Ukraine's been for the most part pulling out of there, but we have not heard of a complete withdrawal from the Kursk Oblast. And also Ukraine operating in a small amount of territory in the Belgorod Oblast, close to the border with Kursk as well. So I'm sure a lot of these Russian forces are going to be freed up now to be able to attack Ukraine, and that's what we're expecting coming here in the very near future. So we'll stay close knit on that story there, and as soon as we get updates on that, I'll let you guys know, but I'll show you that information here in just a minute on X. We also have reports that last night Ukraine launched a drone attack into Russia. We had like the Kursk region heavily being attacked, lots of explosions over there. Also Rostov Oblast, lots of explosions over there also, and lots of residential buildings being hit inside of Russia last night from what it looks like with the video footage that I have coming out today. And Ukraine being heavily targeted last night. Also 74 drones coming from Russia last night. Kharkiv region being hit very hard. And we even had a home being destroyed that had a family inside of it. And unfortunately, we don't know the outcome of the family that was inside. I think some children were inside of it as well. And then numerous other updates I want to give you guys coming out from this war. So let's go ahead and jump into this, guys. We're going to hop on over here to X now with the Ukrainian review. The Russians are preparing an offensive in April, said commander of the 1st Assault Battalion and 3rd Assault Brigade. The enemy has reserves and is training troops at firing ranges. In the 3rd Brigade sector, they may throw 2 to 3 divisions into the attack. Okay, so possibly thousands of Russian soldiers going to be launching a new assault onto possibly the Sumy and Kharkiv regions, what we've been hearing. There was some small talk that maybe Zaporizhzhia, we might see some extra activity down there as well. But primarily in the Sumy and Kharkiv regions, we could definitely see a new offensive opening up from the Russians now. As recently, they somewhat have gained the upper hand in the Kursk region. They've forced Ukraine out of lots of territory in the Kursk region, but we know again right now that Ukraine is still fighting strong over there. They're holding on to a much smaller piece of land than what they had previously, but nonetheless still fighting over there. So we'll see how things turn out here over the next week or so. So we'll jump on over to Kate from Kharkiv now. Kharkiv right now, don't look away, watch the video, they just don't stop. Okay, this was Kharkiv last night getting battered by Russian drones. Lots of explosions back to back. Take a look. All right, so yesterday we reported to you guys that Russia did not fire any drones into Ukraine, and I was actually expecting a much heavier attack onto Ukraine today. Only 74 drones, but still a pretty significant amount of drones going into Ukraine, and Kharkiv looking like it's taken the bulk of the hits as of last night. Here's another one from Victoria. Russia attacked a family's home with children inside in a direct hit. The family had already lost their home when Russia invaded Sloviansk in the Donetsk region. So imagine that, you leave one region of Ukraine to try to get away from the fighting, and all of a sudden your home gets attacked again. So you lose 2 homes in the last few years. Again, we don't know the outcome of this family, if they were okay or not, but this home completely destroyed. It looks like it may have been hit by some sort of maybe guided aerial bombs or something, considering how much damage has been done here. It could have been a drone maybe, but I'm thinking more likely some sort of bombs or missiles being used here. But take a look at this real quick.
Прямое попадание. Вот тут. Как мы выжили, это вообще просто. Покажите рубашку.
Да. Реально.
All right, so very sad to see this, guys. I mean, imagine if this was your home, regardless of what country you live in, all of a sudden it was destroyed by some sort of bomb or aerial attack. And we don't know what type of munitions was used here, but considering the amount of damage, it looks like it was a bomb that was potentially dropped on this house. So if this family was inside, it doesn't look like it was very possible they survived, but hopefully they did. Now from the Ukrainian Review, Zelensky last night, the Russian army continued using attack drones against Ukraine. A total of 74 drones were launched, including 54 Shaheeds. This systematic and constant nature of Russian strikes clearly indicates that Moscow despises the diplomatic efforts of partners. Putin does not even want to ensure a partial ceasefire. What's needed is new and tangible pressure on Russia to put this war on a path toward ending. We should not wait until April 11th, when it will be a month since Russia said no to the American proposal for a ceasefire. Action must be taken as soon as possible. We are ready to work with all our partners in the US, Europe, and around the world in the most constructive way to achieve this much needed result, a dignified and lasting peace. Okay, so he put out a video here for us showing the damage inside of Ukraine, about a minute and 15 seconds long. Take a look at this. All right, and the ongoing aerial attacks inside of Ukraine continue, as last night was the first night throughout this entire year that Russia did not launch a major drone attack into Ukraine. So it looks like it's continuing once again. We can see a lot of damage here, and these firefighter crews showing up to put out the fire on what looks like some sort of business here. I'm not sure if it's an apartment building. It could be. We can see a massive hole in the side of this wall here, probably from one of these drones directly striking the building. So now we'll move on to more updates from Max24. Here we go, and he's got some little eagle emotes, map from Drone Bomber. So these were the drones going into Russia last night from Ukraine. So you can see here the Rostov region heavily being attacked by drones. We had Belgorod, Voronezh, Kursk Oblast, a lot of these regions up here also north of Kursk being attacked at the same time. But most of the videos that I have coming out from this area up here mainly is Kursk. Lots of explosions over there today, and Rostov region as well. So we'll jump on over here to an update from Reasonable Fella United. Rostov and Taganrog last night. Okay, this is all in the Rostov region. I think Taganrog is a city. I'm not sure if it's in Rostov region or Krasnodar Krai, but it's in southwestern Russia. This town has been attacked a lot before. There's lots of military sites inside of Taganrog that usually come under attack from Ukraine. So we'll start off with this first video here. It's going to be very loud in the beginning though, so just get your ears ready. Just want to give you a quick warning. You're going to see a massive flash over here in the top right corner of your screen, and then there's going to be a major explosion followed up with a loud sound, okay? And then we've got another video to check out here also. So we'll start off with this. Just get your ears ready. right, so I apologize for the loud sound here, but massive explosion inside of Rostov region last night. Don't know really what was hit over here, but it looks like this is some sort of residential area. But some sort of building took a direct hit from a Russian Shahed drone. We've got another video here also. Not a whole lot of sound in this video, so we'll keep it kind of low, but we can see more fires that broke out here on what looks like potentially a high-rise residential building. Looks like a lot of these drones may be getting shot down and crashing is what looks like happened here. So we got fire here on the ground just below this building. And also, if you listen in the background, you can hear what sounds like some sort of glass or something. So maybe some windows getting shattered also in the Rostov region of Russia. Now we'll jump on over to Max 24, Bavovna, and Kursk again. Okay, so lots of attacks happening inside of Kursk region last night. We've got an explosion in this video here from Ukrainian drones. Take a look. All right, so not too much information coming out today on what the targets were that Ukraine was going after. All we really know is there was lots of explosions happening inside of Russia last night. So there's coming out from the Kursk region. I think we got another one here also from Max 24. And it says more from Kursk, okay? And what this video looks like to me, if you look here, this is like a tall, high-rise residential building. I think the side of this building takes a hit or some sort of building nearby, but it's so blurry and dark it's hard to see. But just a 4-second clip. Go ahead and take a look at this.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can see right here a massive explosion from one of these Ukrainian drones, and it looks like it may have slammed into the side of that building. This is in the Kursk region of Russia, just over the border from the Sumy region in Ukraine, okay, where these Russian soldiers are going to be coming from here very soon. Now we'll move on to some other updates from Bliskovka. The SSU and National Police detained an FSS agent in Odessa who was making explosives for terrorist attacks. Okay, so this would be like Russia's security service. A 44-year-old repeat offender from the Dnipropetrovsk region was hiding in Odessa and was recruited by the FSS via Telegram. He carried out several sabotage operations, including setting fire to military vehicles. One of the devices was used during the terrorist attack in Belyivka on March 23rd. Another explosive disguised as a fire extinguisher was seized from him. Okay, so pretty crazy news. I mean, we talked about this yesterday. I gave you guys an update on somebody else that was captured, caught red-handed trying to carry out some terrorist attacks or something like that, or sabotage operations with information, I think is what it was. Lots of people being caught in Ukraine recently over the last few months trying to carry out some sort of sabotage or terrorist attacks like this using explosives with like a fire extinguisher. We can see here we've got another update just like that as well from Bliskovka. SSU detained Russian game agents who were preparing a terrorist attack in Lviv. This would be in western Ukraine. A 22-year-old resident of Kiev and her friend were planning to blow up the administrative building of the local regional police department. The traitors faced life imprisonment and with confiscation of property. The perpetrators are in custody. Okay, so here's some pictures coming out from these perpetrators here that were trying to blow up the police department in Lviv. Okay, so pretty crazy, guys. I mean, just so much reports coming out right now. There's lots of potential terrorist attacks inside of Ukraine. I mean, obviously they're at war with Russia, so there's probably a lot of people on the inside because they're right next to the border of Russian territory, and these people might want to try to carry out these sabotage attacks on Ukraine and try to make Ukraine collapse even further or do whatever harm they feel is necessary that they want to carry out on the Ukrainian people. Okay, so lots of reports like this coming out recently, and it's good they caught them. Now for military news UA, there is no NATO issue in the minerals agreement, and there never was, but the agreement cannot go against our future accession to the EU, says Zelensky. Okay, this was being reported just today, and so he's claiming that with the minerals agreement, there's no type of NATO accession tied to this agreement. In terms of Ukraine trying to join NATO, they're not going to be able to utilize that agreement to get into NATO. Is kind of what I'm saying. But at the same time, he's stating that they need to be able to try to get into the EU at some point, that there should be nothing blocking them from getting in. This is something that multiple top officials in the Ukraine's government has been stating. I think Andriy Sybiha stated that yesterday also, the foreign minister of Ukraine. So Zelensky pretty much reiterating that also, that Ukraine does want to join the EU at some point. So now for more translated, several world leaders have held secret talks with Vladimir Putin. not just Orban and not Fico, claims the friend of the Russian dictator, Serbian President Vucic. He also states that he knows at least two of these leaders because his friends at the Kremlin told him about them. Okay, so let me know if you guys believe him or not, but he's claiming that some other world leaders met secretly with Vladimir Putin. And if that happens to be true, who do you think that might be? Would this be other European, allied leaders to Ukraine that maybe are doing this behind Ukraine's back? Or do you think that maybe he's just lying and making this story up? Who really knows? But I just wanted to show you guys a story today that he's claiming. This is the president of Serbia, that some other world leaders have been meeting with Vladimir Putin behind closed doors secretly, okay? So now from next, UK announces new meeting of Ukraine Coalition of the Willing on April 10th. Okay, that's coming up in 8 days. United Kingdom has announced a new meeting of the Coalition of the Willing regarding Ukraine scheduled for April 10th at NATO headquarters in Brussels. The following day, April 11th, we will see a Ramstein format meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. The announcement was made by the UK delegation to NATO, emphasizing ongoing international efforts to support Ukraine amid the war. Okay, so it looks like a new meeting going to be held here on April 10th very soon. This will be another coalition of the willing, and maybe a lot of other top leaders of multiple countries will be meeting once again, and they're going to be talking more about how they will collectively defend Ukraine in the event that we get a ceasefire here in this war. So it looks like that new meeting is coming up here in 8 days. Now, from the Ukrainian Review, at the moment, more than 8,000 former convicts have joined the ranks of the armed forces of Ukraine. Another 900 applications are currently under consideration. Okay, so it looks like a lot of men that were probably in jail inside of Ukraine were given some sort of opportunities to join the military. Maybe they'd be able to get their sentences shorter, in case if they happen to serve in the military for a certain amount of time. So it looks like we had a lot of former convicts joining the armed forces of Ukraine recently. Okay, so 8,000 or more, another 900 applications still being currently held for consideration right now. So that's very big news. Now, Vicegrad 24, the Netherlands announces it will send another $2.2 billion in military aid to Ukraine this year. $540 million will be spent on Ukraine's drone line project. The new initiative will integrate drones at the front on a scale never seen before, building a drone wall. Okay, so we've already been hearing recently that Ukraine is working on like a drone shield right now, is what they're calling it, on the front line. This is what's stopping a lot of the Russian attacks and their assaults in the east, and why also maybe recently, over the last maybe 3 to 4 months, starting right around maybe December, Russian assaults have stalled out. They're not attacking as much, and if they are, they're not really gaining a whole lot of territory based on a lot of the maps we've been seeing. So it looks like Netherlands going to be heavily sending some major aid to Ukraine and also helping out with their drone line project and beefing up the front line with lots of drones to prevent any aerial assaults. I mean, just imagine if Ukraine at some point is using just hundreds of thousands, if not millions of drones on the front line. It's going to be very difficult for Russia to attack at all, even if they're using armored vehicles, because a lot of times these FPV drones can destroy armored vehicles as well, or at least cause major damage. Now, from the Ukrainian Review, NATO believes that the U.S. is threatening the foundations of the alliance, and Washington's rapprochement with Moscow will become a major problem for the bloc. Okay, so NATO's already getting concerned right now with Donald Trump, the U.S. president, getting very close with Russia, and U.S. trying to close in ties and become more friendly with Russia again, and they're thinking it's going to cause problems with NATO members because a lot of the European nations are not friendly with Russia, and NATO's already come out. The Secretary General of NATO, that is, Mark Rutte, he's already come out and said that Europe would not normalize relations with Russia, even if this war comes to an end. They're not going to normalize their relations at all anytime soon. So definitely some concerns right now between the U.S. and NATO in general. European nations worried about the direction that the U.S. is taking right now, considering some of Donald Trump's actions. So you can see the worries that are going on here. Now from Nexta, U.S. pushes back against EU plans to curb American arms sales. Washington has privately urged European allies to keep buying U.S.-made weapons, Reuters reports, as the EU moves to strengthen its own defense industry. According to 5 sources, U.S. officials objected to recent EU efforts that could limit American defense firms from participating in European arms tenders. The pressure comes as Brussels pushes to localize production and reduce reliance on non-European suppliers, a move that could reshape the transatlantic defense market. Okay, so it looks like the U.S. is worried right now that the EU is pulling away from the United States and starting to want to produce their own weapons, build up their own defense industries within their own nations, and not have to rely on the U.S. anymore. And I'm sure that that's a pretty valid, argument, right? Because the U.S. has been doing a lot of things to European countries and just NATO in general, and scaring NATO members into thinking that the U.S. would not come and back them. So, Europe's feeling like they're on their own right now, and they've got to deal with Russia by themselves. So it looks like the U.S. is worried that maybe Europe is going to start pulling away heavily in terms of purchasing weapons and arms from the U.S. And the U.S. is probably going to lose a lot of money because of that. I'm sure they sell a lot of weapons to European nations and obviously helping out Ukraine right now. So looks to me like the U.S. is definitely concerned about that aspect. Now, from Liskovka, Great Britain will transfer 8 to 10 Puma HC.2 transport helicopters to Ukraine, according to Avian's Legionnaires. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. The helicopters were decommissioned by the United Kingdom on March 31st. Okay, so 8 to 10 Puma helicopters, like what you see here in the photo, going to be going to Ukraine. So that's great. These looks like transport helicopters that Ukraine could be using for military operations. So big ups to Great Britain for doing that and handing that over to Ukraine. Now for Max 24, an emergency situation for the Russian Mi-8 helicopter in the Belgorod region. GUR strike with missiles. According to the information from the GUR, a total of 4 helicopters were hit not so long ago, 2 Mi-8 and 2 Ka-52. These were Alligator attack helicopters, okay? And then the Mi-8s are transport choppers on the Russian side. So we actually talked about this last week. We'll go ahead and mute this and let this play. I think it was last week, like earlier towards the beginning of last week, that we had reports that Ukraine had launched some sort of HIMARS attack into the Belgorod region behind enemy lines. And the Russians had some sort of makeshift airfield set up, like basically in an open field. And Ukraine launched this attack with HIMARS and reportedly destroyed 4 Russian helicopters. So this is a video coming out showing probably a Russian service member showing the damage here to one of the what looks like an Mi-8 helicopter here, and you can see a lot of the damage to it on the ground. So it looks like we did have 4 helicopters being destroyed. This is confirmation on the ground showing the destruction of at least one of these helicopters hit by HIMARS. Okay, now from next, Putin's envoy to visit Washington for talks with Trump officials, sanctions paused. Kremlin negotiator Kirill Dmitriev is heading to Washington for talks with the Trump administration officials, Reuters reports. He's expected to meet with U.S. Special Representative Steve Witkoff. According to CNN, despite being under U.S. sanctions, the Trump administration has temporarily lifted restrictions to allow Dmitriev's visit. This is possible, Dmitriev said, commenting on the reports. Improving U.S.-Russia relations is exactly what the world needs for long-term global security and peace. Okay, so this is a report that came out from Reuters. Putin's key investment negotiator heads to Washington for talks with Trump envoy, sources say. Okay, so this is more signs that the U.S. and Russia are still continuing to try to negotiate some sort of term here, maybe to end the war. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to talk about, but it's interesting they lifted sanctions just for this man to head over to the U.S. So it looks like they're going to be discussing something, and maybe we're going to hear some big news coming out over the next week. But we'll continue to follow that story, and if I get information, I'll update you guys on that. Now from the Kiev Post, Zelensky said Ukraine has handed over evidence to the U.S. proving that Russia violated the energy truce. Okay, this is a lot of the talk that we've been going over the last week, that Russia's been violating this energy truce agreement. They're not supposed to be attacking power stations inside of Ukraine. And just yesterday, Andriy Sybiha, the foreign minister, announced that Russia had once again attacked another power station inside of Kherson, destroying it, leaving 45,000 people without electricity. So the U.S. allegedly has already handed over evidence to the U.S. to prove that Russia's attacking energy infrastructure in Ukraine. Now for military news UA, Trump believes Putin is stalling the U.S. plans to aggressively implement sanctions, including on Russia's shadow fleet, according to Fox correspondent at the White House. Trump is disappointed with Putin and believes that Russia is slowly pursuing comprehensive ceasefire negotiations, interdicting Russia's shadow fleet, which transports illegal oil through the Baltic Sea, would be an easy target for pressure. Okay, so we've been hearing recently that Trump has been very disappointed or upset or even pissed off in some ways at Vladimir Putin for allegedly stalling the war. that it looks like, maybe Trump is starting to realize that Putin is actually doing that. Many people were warning that, even a month ago or longer, that Putin would do this, stall out these negotiations as long as possible, take advantage of the time that he has available to him, take over more territory in Ukraine. Now we're hearing of this new offensive being launched. So is the US going to take action on Russia here very soon? I'm thinking probably not in the short term, maybe the next few weeks or the next month or something, if we don't see any like actual movement with the ceasefire deal. But who knows what's going to happen here? We'll have to see if the US takes action. Now, from Max 24, senior Trump administration officials say a ceasefire in Ukraine is unlikely to be reached in the next few months. According to Reuters, U.S. officials, including President Trump himself, are growing increasingly disillusioned with Moscow. Last week, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told the Baltic foreign ministers that peace in Ukraine was uncertain and that the U.S. was still far from reaching an agreement. Okay, so this is not good news. I mean, I'm sure, Donald Trump's got to be very furious right now if this war is not coming to an end at anytime soon. And we kept hearing this, the goalpost getting pushed back. We heard from the very beginning he'd end this war in 24 hours. Then we heard in 3 to 4 months. Now we're approaching that time period. Now it can be extended maybe 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, who knows. But it looks like maybe they're going to try to end this war by the end of the year, but who really knows what's going to happen? It looks even highly likely that this war may not come to an end with Trump's pressure, that maybe he doesn't have the ability, or what he told Volodymyr Zelensky at one point, he doesn't have the cards to end this war. What do you guys think? Let me know what you think down in the comments, okay? Now from MZ, Iman. ZSU can illuminate the worn-out optical fiber of the Russians along its entire length and thereby reveal the place of the takeoff of the FPV drones. Then, at the identified point, UAV surveillance is set up, pending the return to the point of the Russian operators. Okay, so we talked about this yesterday, that there was a story coming out that Ukraine found out a way to illuminate these fiber optic cables coming from these drones that use the fiber optic lines. And they could basically trace these lines back to where they're being launched from, and they can attack these areas where these Russian soldiers are launching these fiber optic FPV drones from. Okay, so allegedly this is a video kind of indicating that they have the ability to do this. They can illuminate these and check out to where they're coming from, and then eventually launch attacks on Russian soldiers to prevent these attacks. Now from Anton Gerashenko, Republican, Senator Lindsey Graham and Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal, along with 48 other senators, 24 from each party, have launched an initiative for serious sanctions against Russia that would impose 500% secondary duties on imported goods from all countries that buy oil, gas, uranium, and other products from Russia. These sanctions would be imposed if Russia refuses to engage in good faith negotiations for a lasting peace with Ukraine or initiates another effort, including military invasion that undermines the sovereignty of Ukraine after peace is negotiated. According to Lindsey Graham and Senator Blumenthal, the bill has not yet been registered, but the number and party affiliation of the signatories to the declaration indicate that if it is brought to a vote, there will be no problem with support in either the House or the Senate. This point is specifically clarified in the explanatory note to the bipartisan declaration. These sanctions against Russia are at the ready and will receive overwhelming bipartisan bicameral support if presented to the Senate and House for a vote. We share President Trump's frustration with Russia when it comes to obtaining a ceasefire and support President Trump's desire to achieve a lasting, just, and honorable peace. Senators from both parties note and remind that the dominating view in the United States Senate is that Russia is the aggressor, and that this horrific war, and Putin's aggression must end now and be deterred in the future. Okay, so this was Senator Lindsey Graham right here and Senator Blumenthal as they visited Kyiv months back. So apparently they're putting out some sort of plan to sanction Russia heavily, and 500% secondary duties. Okay, so any countries that buy oil, gas, uranium from Russia, they would be putting heavy secondary duties, or I guess these would be tariffs, I'm assuming, onto those countries, and basically could make Russia's economy collapse and force many of these countries to no longer buy from Russia. So they're doing that to scare Russia into forcing them into an agreement, but also at the same time preventing them from ever attacking Ukraine. So I think that's a very smart thing to do. I think major security guarantees need to be announced, such as this, to prevent Russia from ever attacking Ukraine again. So I think that's smart of them to do that. You guys can let me know what you think on that. Now, from Bliskovka, Zelensky hopes to agree on the supply of Taurus missiles with the new German chancellor. The president said that Ukraine would work on the issue after the election of the new chancellor. German Foreign Minister Baerbock said she could not promise concrete results as she will soon resign, but negotiations between Germany, France, and the UK and Ukraine are still ongoing. Okay, so in terms of the Taurus missile, it looks like we could be seeing this going to Ukraine at some point in the near future. We're still waiting for the new German Chancellor Friedrich Merz to get into power. Once he ends up getting into his position, we might start seeing negotiations happening with this with Ukraine, and this could maybe come after the war. Who really knows? But Ukraine really wants to get these Taurus missiles. Maybe this could be a heavy deterrent for Russia to ever attack Ukraine. Also, if Ukraine ends up getting these after the war comes to an end. So we'll see how that goes. Still an update on that today. Now from NOAA reports, Latvia is sending another 1,500 combat drones to Ukraine. In total, two Latvian companies will deliver 12,000 drones worth 17 million euros in the first half of 2025 as part of the International Drone Coalition. So here's some pictures coming out showing these drone shipments to Ukraine. Loaded up on these trucks, going to be sent over to Ukraine to use on the front line. Okay, so 1,500 combat drones. Assuming these are probably going to be FPV drones that they can utilize on the front. So Latvia, many of the nations over here in the Baltic nations, that is, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, have been supporting a lot of drones for Ukraine. So huge story out there today. Now for Bliskovka, Trump's nominee for chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, Dan Kane, has supported arms supplies to Ukraine. Bloomberg reports Kane believes that Putin will continue the war in 2025 despite heavy losses. He emphasized the importance of military assistance to Ukraine and noted that the United States should focus on unique capabilities for support while Europe should increase its share. Okay, so Trump's nominee for chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, his name is Dan Kane. So apparently he's very supportive of supplying Ukraine weapons that they need and also preventing Russia from attacking them. So this is kind of a good sign that maybe maybe the United States might continue to support Ukraine in the near future. Maybe. I mean, so far we haven't really seen weapon supplies being cut off to Ukraine at all. There was a short pause for maybe 3 to 4 days at one point. But aside from that, weapons are still flowing into Ukraine. And what we've been seeing over the last few days is a lot of weapon shipments going into Ukraine. So it looks like there shouldn't be too much worry, at least in the near future, for Ukraine getting weapons coming from the U.S., but we'll see how things play out. Now for Max 24, Zelensky arrived in Dnipro on a working trip. He visited wounded soldiers in a medical facility where they are being treated and awarded them with awards. One of the greatest results in saving the lives of our people is in Dnipro. More than 40,000 wounded, 96% were saved. Okay, so this is Zelensky today as he arrived in Dnipro. This is kind of in like kind of central Ukraine, closer to the front line, but more like central, southwestern area. We've been seeing Zelensky just all over the place recently. I mean, this guy works very hard. He's either visiting with leaders, and if he's not visiting with leaders, he's never just sitting in his office. If you notice, he's always traveling around. He was just in the Donetsk region not too long ago. Visiting some of the memorials over there and meeting with some of the troops on the front line. Now he's over here in Dnipro. I mean, this guy is just everywhere. He's an absolute machine, and he never stops, and it seems like he does not want to give up on defending Ukraine. So this is a new update on where he's at today. Now from Nexta, Russia restricts another key oil export route via the Black Sea port. Russia suspended operations at a mooring in the Black Sea port of Novorossiysk just one day after limiting shipments from a crucial Caspian pipeline. As the world's second largest oil exporter, Russia produces around 9 million barrels daily, nearly 10% of global output. Russian ports also handle significant oil shipments from neighboring Kazakhstan. These back-to-back disruptions could have wider implications for global oil markets and energy prices. Okay, so Russia restricting another key oil export route via the Black Sea port. Now, I wonder if this is due to the attacks down in Krasnodar recently. We had the Tuapse oil refinery being hit down there, Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery, lots of different oil refineries being smashed in the Krasnodar region, which is probably not too far away from where this Black Sea port would be at in Novorossiysk. So I'm not sure if it has anything to do with that, a lot of these oil refineries being hit, or is this Russia just doing this to try to drive up the cost of oil? We have been seeing oil kind of dropping recently. I forgot what it was at, but last I saw it has been kind of coming down, and I've also been seeing gas prices falling in my area. So I'm not sure if it's due to, just Russia trying to raise the price of gas again so they can, get more money and income for their war. But you guys can let me know what you think on that. But Russia's been doing this several times recently, closing down some of their export ports inside of Russia for oil. Now, from Liskovka, Air Defense Forces of Ukraine destroyed 41 out of 74 Russian UAVs. 20 Russian imitator UAVs were lost locally without negative consequences. So here's our latest update with the amount of drones going into Ukraine: 74 entering Ukrainian territory, 41 being shot down, at least 20 probably being brought down by electronic warfare. But we definitely had some damages inside of Ukraine last night. Now, our final update of the day, the Kiev Independent. These are the indicative estimates of Russia's combat losses as of April 2nd, according to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. All right, guys, last update of the day. Russia's losses as of April 2nd: 1,410 troops, 24 AFVs, 41 vehicles and fuel tanks, 10 tanks, 24 artillery systems, 43 UAVs, and it looks like that is it. Okay, so not too much being reported destroyed in terms of vehicles on the Russian side today. Usually we have at least one MLRS being destroyed and sometimes one or two over here. But yeah, only 24 artillery systems today, 10 tanks only, 41 vehicles and fuel tanks, probably the least amount of vehicles and fuel tanks I've ever seen in a very long time. 24 AFVs about average, and 1,400 troops a bit higher than what we typically see, around 12 to 1,300, but still about pretty average for today on April 2nd. So I want to thank you guys very much for being here for this update, and just another friendly reminder, guys, on April 5th, starting this Saturday, I am going to be out of town. I'll be on vacation from April 5th up until the 12th is when I will return back in town. But I will not return to video updates until the following Monday, which will be the start of my normal week. So that's when we'll come back. We'll be gone from the 5th until the 14th of April. So just a heads up on that. So thanks again so much for tuning in for this update, guys. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.